Hello and welcome back to Gapeys Garden. It's a cool, dreary fall day today here in Western Washington, about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, but it's not raining. So I thought it would be a good time to do a little update on what we have growing in the greenhouse as well as outside the greenhouse in some raised beds. Now we've had 8 inches of rain so far this month, which is quite a lot of rain for any garden, but everything is doing fairly well despite all the rain. We've got more rain coming, and we've had a little bit of flooding in the area, but we're doing okay here. Let's take a look and see how the garden is doing with all this rain. Let's start here in the raised beds. This first one over here is in full shade all day long this time of year because we've got this fence here, and the way the sun is positioned, it's just doesn't get any sun at all. So we've got a few leeks here that were started in spring. They kind of got covered up by the tomatillos that were in here this summer, so they're just starting to grow again. So we're probably going to be able to harvest those maybe in the spring. And you can see this stuff here. This is actually a flower called Bee's Friend, and these are all volunteers from when the flower went to seed earlier this summer. So I didn't think they were that cold hardy, but it looks like they're actually doing okay. But I'm sure if we get a hard enough freeze, they'll probably die back. And this pile of dead stuff here is a cover crop of buckwheat that was over in that bed earlier this summer. And I just pulled it out and piled it up over here, and maybe we'll have that break down over the winter, and if not, we'll just toss it in the compost bin. And here we have a butternut squash. This is a brulee butternut, and the vines are dead, and this just never fully matured, so I just left it in the ground, and that is just basically slug food at this point, but I should toss that in the compost bin. We've got another one over here. This one is just getting devoured by the slugs. We've seen a few of those on there late at night, just having a little feast. So that one is going to go in the compost too because I don't want to feed the slugs. And then we do have one kale that was started in the spring. It's actually doing really good. This is a variety called Casper kale. It has really nice white insides, and it does seem to get more pronounced in the cooler weather. But we've been harvesting off of this over the last couple of months. It was pretty much covered up by corn and zucchini throughout the summer, but it's looking really good now. And then on this other side of the bed, we have our chives. This is just regular chives, and you can see it doesn't really like the cold too much, so it's starting to kind of die back. Some of it is a little bit harvestable still, so I have taken a few stems off there for different dishes. And we've got our garlic chives over in this corner, and I did cut that down and it hasn't really grown back, so we're not going to be able to see that again until probably spring. Over here we have our herb bed, and this is a sage. I have a couple different varieties of sage. This is just the regular traditional sage. And then we've got a variegated sage over in this corner. And we've got, this is a golden oregano, but when it's in the shade, it turns back to green. But in the summertime when it gets some sun, that turns a really pretty yellow. And we've also got some thyme here. And again, this bed is also in the shade pretty much 100% of the time this time of year. And then we've got a red vein sorrel. Now this red vein sorrel actually died pretty much all the way to the ground this summer because it just didn't get enough water. But now that it's been raining so much, it's pretty much come back to life. So that's kind of neat to see. Here's our raspberry canes. This is an ever-bearing golden raspberry, but as you can see, it is done producing. All the flowers and fruit are all dried up and the leaves are starting to fall. So with the ever-bearing varieties, it's best to remove all these older canes, and then new canes will come up in the spring and produce fruit. So we're going to be working on that here pretty soon. Now this raised bed is where we've got most of our winter and fall crops. We've got a variety of things in here. One of the things I'm most excited about are those greens back here. This is a pink chicory. So eventually when it gets cold enough, the leaves are going to start turning pink. And this is the only one that's really starting to get a lot of pink on it. The rest are still looking pretty green, but they are starting to head up a little bit. So hopefully when we get some more colder weather, we'll start seeing more pink. But we've also got some beets in here and got another beet. And then we've also got some Swiss chard. And it's hard to tell which ones are Swiss chard and which ones are beets. They look very similar, and I'm not really sure which is which, but I think a lot of these red ones are the beets. Then we've got a few parsley back here, and everything in this bed is pretty cold hardy, so it should be fine down to about 20-ish degrees. If it gets any colder than that, then I'll probably cover it with a frost cloth. And this bed is just getting pounded with rain, so I'm thinking about also covering it with the plastic to keep the rain from getting everything too soggy. We've got some kale back here. I think this is the Bare Necessities kale. It's kind of got some frilly leaves. And we've got a red mustard back there that is looking really good. And a couple of lettuces. And here I've got a label on that one. That one's a Swiss chard. And more lettuces. And unfortunately, it looks like our bok choys are going to flower. So I had a couple bok choys in here and they just started bolting, and I'm not sure why, because it's been pretty cold, not warm enough or sunny enough to bolt in my opinion. And then on this side of the bed, we still have some straw flowers in here, but these are pretty much done. The foliage is actually still pretty green, but all the flowers are pretty much dead, and I don't think any more will be coming out. And then we've also got a few lettuces over on this side of the bed. Another bok choy. This one, or pak choy, same thing. It looks like it might be doing okay, so we'll have to keep an eye on that one, but it might be bolting here before too long. We've got another, well, I thought this was parsley, but it looks like this might be cilantro. We've got some more lettuces back here. Now, if you saw last week's video, you saw what I planted in this bed. This is going to be the garlic and onion bed. I don't have the onions planted yet. That'll be later in the spring. But this half of the bed has all the garlic. We've got 8 different varieties, 3 soft necks and 5 hard necks. And we've got a mulch of the front yard leaves from our maple trees. So that is covering this bed and keeping it nice and toasty. Then we've got 1 kale left in here, and these are kind of a tree kale. But I've been feeding this one to the chickens. This one is, I think this is a kaleidoscope kale, and it's had a lot of bug damage. So that's why I've been feeding this one to the chickens. Let's see if they want some. They're always up for some kale. It's one of their favorite treats. So back here are our fruit trees. This is a Desert King fig that I just planted in the spring, and it just grew like crazy. But I also planted some leeks around the base of it, and we're down to about 5 or 6 left, but I've harvested a couple of these already, and they did really, really well back here. This is the most successful I've been with leeks ever, and I've tried growing them a few times before, but they just never got this size. So I'm really happy with how these turned out, and I'll probably grow some back here again next year. The other in-ground fig we have back here is the Latterula or honey fig, and unfortunately last year this one died all the way back to the ground. So I was gonna pull it out, but I decided to leave it in the ground, and if it dies back again this year, I think I'm gonna put something else in here. So we'll see how it does. But also I have in this bed some foxglove obscura sunset variety. So I've got 4 of these guys in here. This is a perennial. I planted it kind of late, so I'm not sure if that's going to die back to the ground or not. I haven't grown foxgloves before, but we'll have to wait and see how that does back here. And then we've also got a surprise here. This is a anemone, and I thought I pulled out all of my anemone and ranunculus corms over the summer after they died back, but this one somehow managed to escape and has come back. Normally these bloom in the spring, but this one just really wanted to bloom. So we've got this bloom there. We've got another bud coming out here. And then I noticed we've also got another one coming out here, and I'm not sure if that's a ranunculus or a anemone. They look very similar, but no flowers on that one, but maybe it'll bloom this spring. Now here's our beehives. We've got 3 in the backyard and 1 in the front yard. You can see we have some roofs on them. This is a corrugated roofing from Ondura, and we like to put this on top of the hives to keep the rain from driving into the front of the hive. So it usually keeps the little porch here nice and dry so that they don't get too wet. We've got 1 bee here that just came out to get a little bit of fresh air. Here's the last raised bed. This is the one where we had the peppers in, but we've got those all pulled out, and I didn't plant anything after I pulled those out. But on the other half of the bed, I do have a few things that I popped in here. We've got some more of that chicory, and that one was just planted recently, so it's a lot smaller than the other ones. We've also got some parsley, a couple more leeks. These ones didn't do too bad over here either. And we've got, I think that's Swiss chard and some lettuce back there. And then over on the other end of the bed, we've got some celery. So this celery was planted in the spring, so it's getting really, really big. I've been harvesting quite a lot of it over the last few weeks actually, but it did really well. And then this dead looking thing here that's growing on the side of the compost bins, hello Peter, is a sunchoke, also called a Jerusalem artichoke. And this is a red variety. Normally they're white. You can see the top part is dead, but the bottom part is what you eat. So these are the roots, and the chickens do like to nibble on these, but they're best eaten after it's gotten pretty cold. So that probably goes down fairly deep. So we do have quite a bit of that to harvest throughout this winter if the chickens don't dig it all up. And then lastly, outside we have our in-ground bed. There's not really anything growing in here. We've got a layer of leaf mulch down from the front yard. This is broccoli that went to seed. There's no leaves left on it, but the chickens have been nibbling on that. And we've got another one over in this corner. And then this is our dahlia that I grew from seed last year. So it is all died back. I haven't decided if I'm gonna dig up the dahlia bulbs or not. And we've got this was a coneflower. So it's good to leave these guys in the ground and not pull them out because they do contain seeds that the birds enjoy over the winter time. And back here we have some more straw flowers. These look about in the same condition as the other ones. They're looking nice and green, but the flowers are all pretty much waterlogged and dried up. So I'm going to be pulling those out and tossing them in the compost here pretty soon. It's time to take a look and see what's going on in the greenhouse. We've got several figs in here that I'm probably going to be removing because the temperature swings in the greenhouse have been pretty high. So we've got a little temperature thing here, and it shows it's 71 degrees right now, and it was actually warmer than that a little while ago, which is really not good for figs because they get pretty confused. They don't know if it's time to wake up or not. You can see there is a little bit of green poking out on some of the figs, which is probably not a good thing because we don't want them to wake up earlier than they should. We don't want them waking up until springtime. So I'm either going to be moving these outside or into the garden shed. We do still have a couple figs on these, but these aren't going to ripen, so I'm just going to pull that off. I think that's the only fig that's left on here. Oh, look, we've got some little mushrooms growing in that one. And I've got pretty much all the peppers pulled out of here and got all the fall and winter greens planted. We've got a mix of spinaches and kales in here. So this is a dinosaur type kale. We've got some bugs you can see munching on some of the leaves in here. There's another kale. That one is the scarlet kale. I've probably got about 4 or 5 different kale varieties in here. We've got another kale right there. That one is probably a blue Vates curled kale maybe. And we've got several different varieties of spinach in here as well. And lots of parsley. So I've probably got 8 parsley plants in the greenhouse, which is probably more than I really need, but I had a bunch of extra ones, so I just started tossing them in all over the place. I've also got a little baby red mustard there, and that guy there is a Swiss chard that is looking really pretty good. And we have some Egyptian walking onions back here that have just been kind of multiplying in the greenhouse over the last couple of years. And I've got a little patch of radishes back there. I don't expect those are gonna really grow. I just kind of tossed them in there late in the summer, and we're just not getting enough sun, I don't think, to get those to bulb up. But we've also got, it looks like we've got a couple of little cilantros back there behind the radishes too. And then on this side of the greenhouse, we've also got some more spinaches and kales. And I have this, I've got a chicken wire down across these because something was eating the leaves off of the spinach, and I'm not sure if it was a rodent or slugs or something else that ate this one almost all the way to the ground, but it started putting out some new leaves, so I think it might be okay as long as it doesn't get eaten up again. We've got some more of that kale here, and then we've got some cold hardy lettuce, and this is called, I believe it's called Ice Queen. So with a name like Ice Queen, it's sure to be pretty cold hardy. I haven't tried this variety before, so we'll see how that does here in the greenhouse. And more kale, and more of that chicory that we have outside the greenhouse. We have some thyme here, and more little tiny red mustard, so I don't expect to harvest any of that until probably springtime. And we've got actually one pepper here that is a volunteer that came up over the summer, and I have no idea what it is. It looks like it might be a Thai variety. It could be the Kangstar White Thai. I've grown a few different Thais in the greenhouse, so I'm surprised it's still alive because it's gotten down to, I think, 26 degrees in here. So it doesn't seem to have any leaf damage at all. So we'll see. We'll just leave it in there and see how long it lasts. More Swiss chard there. And we have a couple of purple bok choys in here too, and this one is getting devoured by something. Looks like some kind of a bug or slug. More parsley back here. And then we've also got this monstrosity. Check it out. This is the peri peri pepper. I have trimmed it back quite a bit, but I decided to just leave it in the ground just for fun because it had so many peppers on it, and it's actually holding up fairly well. The cold doesn't seem to have damaged it at all, and the peppers are still ripening. Pretty amazing. So we'll see how long that'll last before I take it out. I don't really have any plans for that space, so I'm just gonna leave it there. Oh, we've also got a volunteer celery that's growing back here. This has been here all year long. I'm not sure which variety it is. I've grown a couple different celeries. I'm not really sure how it got in here either because I haven't grown celery in the greenhouse before. But it's been doing pretty well, and I've harvested a few stalks from it already. And that is all we have growing in the garden this time of year. I hope you enjoyed the update. Let me know what's growing in your garden. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. You can also find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.